What is going on, Comic Fam? It's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro, and I am joined by comic creator James Robinson. Welcome to the show.
Hello, good to be here.
I'm
Nice to be here.
so excited to talk to you. If you are not familiar with James's work, most people know you from your time on Starman, which fantastic, or Scarlet Witch. But you've been doing a lot of stuff with Dark Horse lately, and kind of when I reached out to you, you got the series that just wrapped up after we just wrapped up the other day here at Los
Yeah.
Montrose from Dark Horse. I want to hop into all things comics, but I always like to ask first, did you always have a love for comics growing up, or did this kind of come later on in your life?
No. I'm one of those guys that grew up, learning how to read because they wanted to read comic books. I've been comics have been a part of my life for years, and then I kind of drifted away a little bit when I was in my late teens, early 20s, um, because I was in film school and had more aspirations in that direction at the time. And then with like the resurgence, not the resurgence, but the veneer of maturity that comics began to get with, Frank Miller and Alan Moore, Matt Wagner, Hernandez brothers, that stuff, that kind of brought me back into it, as it did a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then I never left. I've always followed comics, and I had my grand plan was to do comics for a little while until I took advantage of my filmmaking degree and got more into film. And I wrote and directed a black comedy, Comic Book Villains, and I
Hmm.
wrote Extraordinary Gentlemen. And I've written screenplays for all of the studios. I've done a lot of it, but comics have always played more of a creative role in my life than I envisioned, I admit, when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for it. I mean, it's a fantastic medium.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you went and were working on becoming a screenplay writer and stuff like that. Where at what point then did you say like, okay, I want to make a shift into writing comics and dipping your toe into the world of comics?
Oh, no, it wasn't like that. It was that I was like I'm initially trying to get into film.
Okay.
I was still in England, living in England, and things were just taking more slow, more time than in my immature young man's, need for things to happen quickly way. It was happening. So I got a job at Titan Books and very quickly became the editor there, even though I didn't really kind of failed upwards into that role. And then at the same time, I wrote a graphic novel called London's Dark with an artist called Paul Johnson, who has actually retired from comics. He did a long time ago. Now he's a masseuse, but he was doing comics. He did one of the books of magic with Neil Gaiman. He did some
Mhm.
bits and pieces here and there. So we did that book. That got me to the attention of Matt Wagner and Archie Goodwin, and they wanted me to work. I mean, Matt Wagner wanted me to take over Grendel, which had it stayed at Kamiko, I would have. Instead, he had to like relaunch it with his art and his story when it went over to Dark Horse a few years later.
Yeah.
And then my series with Teddy Christensen got published. But that was something I did a long time ago, and at the same time, Archie was trying to get me work at Marvel when he was running Epic, and then when he moved to DC, I got the Golden Age and Legends of the Dark Knight and stuff like that as I was, and then Starman. So all of that was going on while, on the other
Okay.
hand, I was trying to get into film, and I wrote this kind of sci-fi detective thing for a small film company called IRS, and it was completely rewritten, terrible rewrite. Um, so it's not something that I like people to see because my name is on it, but my writing is not that is not my writing. But that got me to CAA, the agency, and it
Okay.
got me into the WGA, and then so I was doing screenplays from that point on. As you might be aware, it might have gotten worse now, actually, but the ratio used to be for every ten scripts that are written for the studio, one of them will get made.
Yeah.
So it's easy to have a career in film and never see anything get made. But if your writing is of a certain quality, they'll keep hiring you. So that was me for a while, and then I wrote League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The original script for that was really great. I'll say that. I'll hold it up to defend that to anybody. But then 9/11 happened,
Mm.
and there were too many aspects of the script taking place in New York's five corners. Like
Yeah.
gangs in New York, that kind of took
Hmm.
that kind of look. And they were like, we can't make this movie, but we have Sean Connery and he wants to make this movie. So we're going to do a whole new movie and you're going to write it. We're going to tell you what we want in it. So that was the movie that was made. And then I wrote other stuff after that. So I've always been doing these screenplays,
Yeah.
but at the same time, the comics, it's just so much fun to write comics when you have the right artist and especially the right editor and all of that. If you have the wrong people, it can become a little bit frustrating or soul destroying. But I've
Yeah.
been pretty lucky with the
Yeah.
people I've worked with.
Oh, and that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. Like, how do you go about, and I'm sure it's probably different with different projects with different companies. How do you go about picking your artists? Because you have some fantastic artists on, your project. Like Scarlet Witch alone, you had, I think, a different artist for almost every issue. Like
We had what's her name? The artist on the first issue came back to
Vanessa,
finish
right?
on the last one. Yeah, Vanessa. But what the reason why that happened on Scarlet Witch was that I went to for a couple of years I was invited to the Marvel summits. And I couldn't believe that they had no plans. And it was partly because at the time, 20th Century Fox still owned them, or everything mutant. So they
Mm,
weren't keen to promote anything like that. But because Scarlet Witch was in the Avengers, Elizabeth Olsen playing her, I was like, guys, you got to do a Scarlet Witch book, and do a book that people who have seen the movie can jump into and enjoy and not get caught up in 30 years worth of her relationship with the Vision and all the other stuff that
yeah,
um can and fans Marvel zombies, fans love that stuff. But if you're getting into comics or you're encountering a character the first time, it can be a little bit off-putting or confusing. So I pitched this and they well, what's his name? Dan Buckley was like, "Wow, well, I mean, I had no interest in doing a Scarlet Witch book, but seeing his passion, talking about me to everyone else, we should do this book." So bravo to Dan. The problem there then was that there wasn't an artist leaping out that wanted to do a Scarlet Witch book. It just, so the idea came to, I think it was Mark Paniccia was the editor. He was the editor, but I think it was his thought was that I'd had a lot of good fortune and written some good stories in Starman with the Times Past, where every issue I would find another artist, and that was Times Past was me finding the artist, suggesting them to Archie. He was very open to what I said, and he thought my taste in them was good. So those Starman Times Past allowed me to tell certain stories, but
mhm,
also write to the strengths of those artists. We boast about or we pride ourselves on the things we think we've done right. And I think writing to an artist's strength is a talent I have. I don't
yeah,
just throw a script at the wall and hope someone knows how to draw it. Um, so with that said, we decided to make each issue a one and done. Well, that's a lie. At the very end, it becomes a little bit more serialized. And I did do a two-part where I think I might have been the last person to ever work with Steve Dillon, which
mhm,
is I'm happy I got to work with him, but
yeah,
obviously it's sad that it was his last piece of art. Um, but each issue had a different artist, and I was able to write for their strengths, and it was a lot of fun, and there aren't that many one and done comics anymore. Everything just kind of are these big epic stories, which is fine. And
yeah,
that's what we want. But doing a single issue, like when I was a kid, I remember picking up, Superman or the Avengers or whatever, and you could pick up the story. You kind of pick up a little bit of the back stuff from that had happened in issues before, but there was always a compelling single issue that you could enjoy, and I enjoyed doing that, and I would happily do it again.
yeah. I I love that, and like your time, I'm sure at DC and Marvel, and creating these relationships with artists has probably helped translate to now because you've been doing a string of books now at Dark Horse Comics. How did that kind of come about?
Well, I had these ideas. Um, I sort of, I mean, I didn't drift away. Oh, well, what happened really was I got into TV. I was the writer, executive producer, or co-exec, I should say, on Stargirl for the 3 seasons it was on. So that kind of took me away from comics to a degree. And then when I got back, I had these ideas and I had, these relationships. So I was able to go out and find artists and who were interested. And then I'd been wanting to work with Jesus. We had Jesus Marino and I had been wanting to work together again since he had done a little bit of work on Superman when I was writing that, and then he also did um, the tail end of the Wonder Woman run that I was on. Not a very successful run, but I enjoyed working with him on it, and his work was gorgeous. So, I had him, Scott Collins, who I'd never worked with, but I'd known for years, and he's best friends with Jeff Johnson, who I'm doing this Kickstarter with, which I do want to promote. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
if
yeah, for sure.
um, but we began talking, and he had an idea, and I sort of fleshed it out and turned it into more of an idea. And then Jay Bone, I worked with I did an image series with him a few years ago, or quite a few years ago now, called Saviors, and he had also inked Darwin Cook's art on a single issue, like a Times Past,
Yep.
the Shade, when I did a Shade 12-part series for DC. So he and I had talked a lot, and we knew each other. So that was how I got these things going. And then I called up Phil Hester, and I wanted to know if he was interested in doing a book with me. And I wasn't sure if you had these, so I brought this with me. This is
So,
the new book, Adventures of Lumen N,
uh,
which won't is out. Well, the final issue of Lost Monsters just came out, so I have to assume that the first issue of this will be out next week, the week after, or about two
yeah,
weeks.
I think it says online like September 3rd.
Yeah, oh, well, that is next
Yep,
2 weeks. It's
yep,
2 weeks.
yep.
So I was able to do these very different stories. Um, and again, I think I wrote to the strengths of the artists. Scott Collins on Patra. I should list what they are. So
Yeah.
Patra for Dark Horse is a young girl who we think is dead, and at the end we are left to question whether she's dead or not. And in the course of what will be more than one arc, over many arcs, she will take on my versions of like famous slasher villains from 1970s, Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and all of those, the family from Hills Have Eyes. So Scott for that really kind of upped it up. I mean, he's always a great artist, but he really added an extra quality to his art, which I think took everybody by surprise. And he also colored it, which I had no idea he was that great a colorist, but he
Yeah.
really has a great eye for coloring. So that was Patra. And then the next thing I did with Jay Bone was called Welcome to the Maynard, and it is a hotel for that's been around for hundreds of years, and it caters solely to witches and mages and supernatural beings and metaphysical beings, and it lives right in the heart of San Francisco, under the noses of people in San Francisco, unless you have magical blood or you're part mage or
Mm.
what have you, you can't enter it or see it. So it borrows a little bit, I suppose, from the school in Harry Potter, but I mean, there's lots of other books that have done the same
Right.
thing. Um, and then it's the adventures of this young new bellhop, Pip Philippa, who is training to be a future the house detective of the hotel. So the first issue starts off with a hotel thief, but it builds and there's more of a mystery, and it becomes Pip and Sam, the actual adult house detective, having to prevent an assassination in the final issue. But it's done in a very light, tongue-in-cheek way. Not tongue-in-cheek, that's wrong, but light, fun, humorous
Yeah, yeah,
way.
yeah.
Jay Bone is very into French bande dessinée, French and Belgian bande
Okay.
dessinée. So Tintin and Spiro and all of that sort of slightly cartoony art, the way that the Europeans will use that art, and then the story will still have, murders or mystery
Yeah.
or action. So that was the intention, and I think that series took people by surprise by how charming it was. Obviously I knew it was going to be charming, but people were reminded just how wonderful J Bones.
Oh,
Uh,
the yeah, the art on that book was fantastic. I read the trade last month, and it was to see the art and the story, kind of like you said, like it has this whimsical, fun vibe to the art, but then you're still dealing with like murder mystery kind of
yeah,
stuff and stuff like that. So like your heavy topic still, but in a fun
and
way
then
in art.
the next book, Los Monstros, is Los Monstruos, yes, which is the Spanish spelling of what was originally going to be called Los Monstrous, like the British spelling. But of all people, Marcus Martin, who is the artist on one of the alternate covers, was like, no, no, you got to do it right, so do the right spelling. So wasn't one to argue with Marcus. I worked with him once on a Captain America story, but I adore his art and I wasn't going to argue with him. So we changed the spelling, and that is basically a city on the West Coast that's a little bit like Vegas and a little bit like Los Angeles, and it's populated solely by by like 1930s to 50s monsters from movies, and then also from folklore of Manitou, not Manitous and um monsters and th things like that. So the first issue, the first arc is a private detective, a werewolf private detective named Perry Cutter, and he takes on a case to find a missing. She's not missing. She's a vampiress that a human wants to locate to reacquaint himself with her. But that leads to mystery upon mystery, and it becomes more bigger. And then there's police and police corruption and all sorts of stuff, which I try to keep all these books, all four of these books, for a relatively young audience as well as for adults,
Mhm.
so that kids who I remember enjoying books at 14 and 15 or 11, 12, and I sound like a bit of an old fart, but some of the books now that are just the normal comic books, they to me I was like, really, this is for 11-year-olds? I don't know, man.
Yeah,
Uh, and I'm probably wrong, and it is not a hill I intend to die on, but I just wanted to make these books fun for everybody.
yeah.
So that's what I've tried to do with these, and then the last one, The Adventures of Lumen. Again, that's the one cover, that's alternate cover with Duncan Fegredo,
Oh,
and yeah, there's some beautiful covers. Dan Brereton.
yeah.
This one is Mark Buckingham, Bucky.
Oh,
And then lastly, there is one by, I have to remember how to say his name. Um, Max Fiumara. So
oh,
basically, it's a young girl growing up in India, and she sometimes questions why she's being trained to learn how to, navigate ships, and why she has to learn so many foreign languages, and why she has to learn martial arts. And then one day her lovely home in the Indian countryside is attacked by steampunk. Oh, I should stress it takes place in 1901, the year 1901.
okay.
She's attacked by these steampunk assassins, and she does a good job of defending herself. But when things look like they're getting at their worst, this guy attacks with a armored steam powered elephant with the Gatling guns on it, saves the day, introduces himself, and it's her grandfather who we learn is Captain Nemo, and she's Captain Nemo's granddaughter. And then as she meets him and becomes more enamored with the world and accepting that this is her destiny, they take on this cabal of evil, which comprises any and all Victorian Edwardian fictional villains that I could find. So it builds and builds and builds, and there's lots of other characters come in, but it's mainly also this story of this young girl falling in love with her grandfather and embracing that life. And I really wanted to capture a little bit of the feel of a book I did with Paul Smith years ago called Leave It to Chance,
Okay.
which was a book that I think is the perfect example of a book that can be enjoyed by younger people and also adults, parents, just
Yeah.
people that enjoy a good story. So So that's the book that's come out in 2 weeks, and I recommend it to everybody, and I hope they check it out. And Phil Hester's artwork is amazing.
Yeah.
So and then Mark Deering did a fantastic job of inking him too. I should never forget to mention Mark and Bill Crabtree on the colors.
Yeah.
So that's the last of the 4 books,
So
and then go on. Sorry,
no,
mate.
I was just gonna ask, like, so what's the process for you of trying to figure out like what project you want to do and like pairing that up with the artist because you have four those books. I've read the first three, obviously I haven't read the new one yet that's about to come out, but they're all very unique stories. And you're right, the art really does match, the story you want to tell. The artist really does create. So how do you kind of figure out the story you want to tell and then, match it up with an artist?
Well, when you let me think about that answer really. When you come up with the idea, there's always pockets and holes in that idea
Okay.
that that the artist's energy will fill. So slowly that idea becomes an amalgam of your creativity and the artist's creativity. And then as you begin to develop it more and you begin to write the scripts and everything else, it starts to kind of take on a life of its own, an entity on its own that's a combination of the two talents. So it's kind of happens in stages.
Okay.
And I guess in the past I have done things where I've come up with ideas that are pretty fully formed in my head, and the artist was the right artist for that job, and they do a great job. But it is more my idea, and they're kind of artistically bringing that to light. But with these 4 books, especially, I would say that they were very much where I may have had the initial idea, but then the artist brought a lot to it and made it our idea, which is what I always want, because then an artist is going to be way more invested in it than if they just feel they're coming on as a pair of artistic hands to do
Mhm.
the art.
Does your writing change for, or like your process for writing change for an IP versus creator owned, and kind of maybe figuring
Oh,
out if there's stories that
well,
like you have in your mind that you go, ooh, this would be great as a creator owned, or if there's a story that you go, ooh, this would be great in this certain character of like already
well,
existing property.
okay, yeah, no. So I think with that, when you go into a project and you're writing X-Men or
Yeah.
Justice League or what have you, you go in there knowing that those characters aren't yours, and you know that there are certain things you can and can't do with them. So the idea begins to shape itself with the foundation that's been in place. With Batman, that foundation has been in place for, decades and decades, and it changes to some degree. They just killed Alfred, I guess, but but you can't it will never be yours, and you have to understand that, and I think the story gets tailored to that.
Okay.
Now, I mean, nowadays, I mean, there are still DC's doing a new Vertigo line, I think.
Yeah.
And the problem with stuff like that is you're writing stuff that should be your IP, and you're kind of giving it away. So that's changing now. I mean, I have no idea what that new Vertigo deal is, but I would imagine it's better than the old one.
Right.
Um, so, but with that, you're dealing with you're well, you have free reign,
Yeah.
and you're also like, if someone comes to you, you need a gig, and someone says, "Hey, do you have any ideas for the Skrull Kree War?" And you're like, "Well, I guess I could think of something," and you start to, put your thinking cap on, but with your own ideas, you have free reign. You can do whatever you want. And sometimes I see like stories by people that do a lot of work at DC and Marvel, and their IP stuff feels a little bit like they clearly enjoy working on those superhero books,
Mhm.
and the stuff that isn't their superhero books feels a little bit lost,
Mm.
and or doesn't have a definite artistic vision, to me anyway.
Yeah.
But then you have other people who are perfectly good at doing, um, superheroes, but then they just come alive when they do their own work, and some of them never go back. I mean, Ed Brubaker has, he was writing Batman for years, and now he's just does his own crime books, and they're amazing.
Right.
So it depends on people's personality, creative personality, what they enjoy bringing to a project, you know.
Yeah.
The only thing about when it's your own IP, if they fail, it's a little bit heartbreaking.
Mm.
So there's that. Whereas when you're doing a book for, DC and it doesn't sell, lots of deep books don't sell, and you just, get on the next thing. It's like being a session musician. You come in and play bass on someone's track and you move on, and that, you're playing funk on one track and you go off and you're playing, country and western on another track. So that's a bit of the difference.
Yeah.
But let me say, I would love to. I'm not sure if you're even aware of my Kickstarter. Are you
I
aware of what
saw it. I saw it on Instagram prepping this week. So, but talk about it for sure. Yes.
we have just finished the second issue? It's myself and Jeff Johnson, and it is a fantastic series. Um, called Rogue's Kingdom, and it's about two rogues, a young pickpocket street thief, and an older sellsword, Rondo Manway, and then the street thief young boy is Peachy Least, and they worm their way into a kingdom, Lumpland, with the intention of they get in under false pretenses and they intend to just steal what they can and get out. But they both have more conscience than they would like to admit. And so the kingdom is in danger. There are two other kingdoms, so there's three, and they're kind of in a stalemate because they all have wizards that are capable of destroying each kingdom, It's a little bit like the arms race here. And they end up getting caught in this gigantic adventure with dragons and mythical creatures and swordplay. The art by Jeff Johnson is absolutely stunning. It's actually a little bit of a problem, really, because he wants to make every panel like he's Hal Foster and from Prince Valiant, and he's doing a good job of that, but it takes him a while. So we launched it with our first Kickstarter. That was issue one, and then we have just finished our second Kickstarter that funded, and we are getting ready to mail out the second issue, and then we're already beginning the process of getting the third issue together. So anybody who isn't aware of this because they aren't on Instagram or they're not clued into Kickstarter that much, please check it out. Um, you will not be sorry. I think you can still get issue two, even though it's been funded. You can do it as an add-on
Okay.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
so if you haven't sampled it yet or tried it, please give it a try. If you like my writing, you will love this book.
Yeah. And I'll have a link then to that Kickstarter then where people can find that in the
Uh,
video description of this
Fantastic.
video, or if you're listening via podcast, click the
So
link in
so
there.
the other thing I will say is that the back of the book, I wanted this book to be worth it to buy. So there is 20 to 22 pages of story and art, but then the rest of the book, I have written like each issue has a whole short story in the back about some aspect of one character from the book. There's fake theatre reviews from Lumpland. There's all this extra stuff that we've written in with spot illos and everything else. So it really is a labor of love and I think a very satisfying purchase, a very satisfying read. So it is more than just a comic book.
Yeah. Uh, I can't I can't wait to check that out. Do you, in your process of, of writing, do you gravitate towards one genre more than others? Because like I said, these last four and then the one you're just describing with Kickstarter, they all seem completely different. So like what is like that your idea? Like where do you get your ideas from? Or do they just kind of come and you kind of let them marinate for a bit?
I don't know. I mean, it's a very valid question, but I don't know that I have the answer. There are some people, and I guess I'm lucky enough that we just have a brain is the idea muscle in our brain just
Yeah.
continually comes up with ideas. And Rogue's Kingdom was partly the seed when I was talking to Jeff about when we were first kind of like kicking this around. Movies that we both love. I think you have to be a bit older to have seen them, but there were these two Three Musketeer movies from the 70s with Michael York and Oliver Reed. They're brilliant movies. And Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers. And that kind of swashbuckling, the design, the minute it came up, Jeff was like, "Oh my God, that era of design. That's the look of this book." So there are dragons and there are halflings and all of that, but the design of the clothes and everything else is like 17th century
Okay.
France.
Yeah.
So I don't to answer your question, I have no idea. I mean, we just you just come up with you get these ideas, and I will say one of the things that has helped me immensely over the last 15, 20 years is the internet because I've always sort of done had a lot of history in my stories. Starman especially was filled with history. But back in the day when you had to like get books out of the library or go and buy books and find them and order them, it took forever to get what you wanted. Nowadays, if I, just have this great idea about, which this serial killer in Wisconsin in the 1830s,
Mhm.
I could go online and find everything I need to know about Wisconsin in the 1830s in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that has helped me greatly with allowing my ideas to diversify and be set in different times and be different genres and everything else. Los Monstros, which is only just finished, ladies and gentlemen. So please,
It's
if you
and
haven't
it's
bought
it's
it,
so
by the way,
good. Pardon
did
me.
you like it? Did you
I
read it?
I loved it. Like, and so part of my interruption here, but like I've been telling people, I'm like, it feels like a like LA Confidential mixed with like Universal Monsters, and you just for me, I'm reading this and it sounds like you have a love for a noir and
I
like
do.
the old fashioned crime noir where I'm like, I think and I don't want to spoil stuff because like issue 4 just came out, so go read it. But there are parts where I go, I think I know. I'm like, I know where it's going, and I don't know where it was going.
Oh, good. There should be some surprises.
Yeah.
I will say that apart from obviously the Universal Monsters being a huge influence, LA Confidential was a little bit of a what was well the work of James Ellroy, I should say,
Mhm.
the author that wrote LA Confidential, and he that was one book in what is called the LA Quartet, and his books they would have one character be at the fore of one, or normally there's three characters who are at the fore of one book, and then one of them will get killed off, one of them will go away, and one of them will be a supporting character in the next book, and maybe come back and take a prominent place in the third book. So so in a way, the star of those books is LA itself, and in the same way with Los Monstros, I wanted to make the city a star in itself. In fact, the second arc, which I've written the first issue and Jesus is working on, uh, Perry Cutter is in it, but the main character is Clyde, the man monster,
Yeah.
and and his problem is he has a mystery to solve. And when he was a cop with Perry, they used to be cops together, and then things happen. You'll to read the book and you'll get it. Um, but he gets shot in the head. When we meet him, he's already been shot in the head in the past, and it's the one part of a man monster, like a Frankenstein monster, that you can't change. You replace the brain, and it's a whole different person.
Yeah.
So, so he has to deal with, I mean, and I thought about this. It must be so frustrating to remember a
Mhm.
time when you were more intelligent. When he was cops with Perry, when they were partners, he was the smarter of the two,
Yeah.
and now he isn't. So the idea that he has to go and solve a case himself, and Perry goes off, and that's something that we deal with in the third arc. Um, he has to go off and solve this and remember at a time when he could have done it with great ease, and now every decision and every deduction that he makes it takes something from him. So the second so basically what I'm saying is that Los Monstros is as much a star as Perry Carter or any of the other characters, and we'll see different characters coming and going.
Yeah. So, and that's what I loved about like that the first arc, it wrapped it up like, and if you would have said like, that's it would have been a satisfying story. But when you say like you're already working on the next arc, like I got so excited because I was like, yes, I want to live in this world more still.
Oh, good, good, good. Well, it's based on, like I say, it's sort of a combination of Vegas, where I live now, and LA, where I lived for like 20 years. So it that is an aspect that I really enjoy. The only thing about Perry that's very different than um, the James Ellroy characters is they all tend to be flawed,
Mm,
uh, and they also in all of his books, if people do the right ever do the right thing, they tend to do the right thing often for selfish reasons. They're kind of
mm,
like forced into doing the right thing. But if you look at Raymond Chandler, Philip Marlowe, the main private detective character that Raymond Chandler wrote for, all of basically his career. He really tried to depict him as a sort of white knight,
Mm,
like a beaten up white knight that was trying to do the right thing and be a good guy in a world where it wasn't always easy to be a good guy.
yeah.
So that's more who Perry is, and who, when you meet the heroes, there are other heroes. In the second issue, the mummy bodyguard that is like the doorman of the casino. This will all make sense when you read the
Yes.
book. Um, he ends up being involved in the next arc, and you see
Mm,
that he's an asshole, he's an evil guy. So you see a
yeah.
different viewpoint, there. But and then you have poor Clyde, who is just again a good guy that wants to do the right thing.
Yeah. Uh, well, James, I want to respect your time. We've talked a lot of all your stuff that you got coming out. Is there anything that you wanted to mention to hit on that we haven't gotten to talk about yet?
Uh, Not really. I mean, hopefully the next thing that you'll hear I'm doing will be with Cully Hamner, but he takes forever, so I don't know when that will be.
Okay.
But there are things in the offing. There are definitely things in the offing. There's even something at DC that will probably be officially announced at some point in the future. But again, the artist is takes his time.
Which is not the end of the world if it's going to be good.
Well,
So,
it's annoying though when you've written all the scripts and you're waiting on art. It's very annoying,
oh,
but
I bet.
it's just the nature of the beast, you
Right.
know.
Yep. So,
Well, very nice to talk to you. And if you want me back to talk about Lumen when it's over, I'd be more than happy to do that because that
yeah.
has many arcs as well planned.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to do that. I would love to have you back on and kind of dig into that universe as well. Gang, if you're listening to this podcast, watching, and you haven't checked out Los Montrose, like I said, at the time of this recording, issue 4 just released yesterday. Go get it from your shop. It's a lot of fun. And then, but check out Adventure of Lumen in shops September 3rd.
And
And your
also,
Kickstarter.
well, the Kickstarter, please look check out this Rogue's Kingdom. But then also, I should add because these are important. People do trade weight, but if you want to check out really fun stories, there's Patra, which is in trade,
Yep.
and Welcome to the Maynard with Jay Bone, which just came out in trade too. So there's plenty of stuff out there to find of mine if you care to look for it.
Yeah. So if any of these kind of like you were like, ooh, that sounds interesting, they're all available or will be real soon to check
Yeah.
out. And I highly recommend it. So,
Thank
well,
you very
James, where
much.
can people follow along with you and stay up to date with what you're working on?
Sorry, mate, you got to say it one more time.
Can people follow along with you and stay up to date with what you're
Oh,
working
well, I'm on Instagram,
on? Okay.
so check out Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm still on X, but that's not a fun place to go
No.
anymore. Blue Sky's okay. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not there are not people on it, but it's fun, And then Instagram is where I tell people what I'm up to. I will be launching my own website too in the next few months. So that will have obviously announcements and all of that. And I've also written a novel called The Singular Pair. It's a science fantasy. It's not even science fantasy. It's like a fantasy novel, but it's also a locked room whodunit with a detective set in a world. Actually, it's set in the world of loosely set in the world of Rogue's Kingdom, but
Okay.
probably about 300 years before.
Okay.
So it's sort of in the same world in the way that George R. R. Martin does Game of Thrones, but he also does what's it, egg, something an egg.
Yeah, I can't think of it, but yeah.
These are things that happened in the years
Yep.
before. So it's a little bit like that. That will be announced soon. I'll be putting that on Kickstarter. So I'll have the website up and hopefully people will follow and get on board. But yeah, the main one is Instagram. You'll find me there, and please, the more followers I have, the better. So I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, James, thank you so much for taking some time to talk about your comics with me. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. All
Yep.
right. And thank you, everybody that watches it. I appreciate your support.
Yeah. And with that being said, gang, hopefully you can find some time to curl up and grab a book and nerd out.
Yeah, yeah. See ya.